Imagine standing in a bustling town square in the early 19th century, carefully setting your ornate pocket watch to the exact moment the sun reaches its highest point in the sky. If you were to mount a fast horse, ride just 20 miles east, and compare your watch to the clock towering over the next town, you would find yourself inexplicably out of sync. For the vast majority of human history, time was an intensely local phenomenon, dictated entirely by the mechanical rotation of the Earth and the apparent position of the sun. High noon was simply the moment the sun peaked directly overhead, a physical reality that naturally varied depending on your exact longitudinal coordinates. This hyper-local approach to timekeeping meant that a rapidly expanding country like the United States did not have 4 or 6 broad time zones, but rather thousands of incredibly specific temporal realities. When the clock struck noon in Washington, D.C., it was roughly 11:48 in the morning in Pittsburgh and exactly 12:12 in the afternoon in New York City. Every major city, remote town, and solitary farmstead operated on its own distinct clock, entirely disconnected from the broader world around it. When human travel was strictly limited to the speed of a horse-drawn carriage or a wind-powered sailing ship, these microscopic discrepancies hardly mattered. A traveler moving slowly across the continent would naturally and unconsciously adjust to the changing position of the sun over weeks or months, completely unaware of the minute-by-minute shifts occurring across the landscape. But the mid-19th century introduced a technological leviathan that would violently shatter this localized perception of reality. The steam locomotive arrived, compressing vast geographical distances into mere hours and forcing a rapidly modernizing humanity to confront the chaotic patchwork of local time. Suddenly, moving rapidly between cities meant moving rapidly between entirely different times of day. A train departing a station at a specific local time would arrive at its destination at an entirely different local time, creating a mathematical and logistical nightmare for those attempting to publish coherent, reliable schedules for passengers and freight. The resulting railway travel chaos was not merely an administrative inconvenience or a frustrating puzzle for ticket agents. It was a literal matter of life and death, as heavy trains sharing single tracks relied entirely on accurate timetables to avoid catastrophic, high-speed head-on collisions. If an eastbound engineer's pocket watch was set to Boston time and a westbound engineer's watch was set to New York time, the 12-minute discrepancy between the two cities was not a mere curiosity. On a single track shrouded in fog or snaking through a blind mountain curve, that tiny mathematical disagreement could easily result in 2 massive iron machines occupying the exact same stretch of track at the exact same moment, with devastating consequences. The mounting death toll and the crippling logistical paralysis forced railway companies to take unprecedented, unilateral action. They realized that the natural movement of the sun could no longer dictate human schedules, and that a synthetic, standardized system of time had to be imposed over the natural world to ensure safety and efficiency. In Great Britain, the Great Western Railway took the bold, pioneering step of establishing a unified timetable across its entire sprawling network. They abandoned the ancient reliance on local solar time altogether in favor of a single, standardized reference point that would govern every station and every conductor. This monumental shift required a highly reliable central clock to serve as the ultimate, unquestionable authority. The railway companies turned to the Royal Observatory in London, officially adopting Greenwich Mean Time as the absolute standard for every station on their line, effectively synchronizing a massive portion of the country. The British innovation proved incredibly successful, but North America presented a vastly more complicated geographical challenge. The sheer, overwhelming size of the continent meant that adopting a single, unified time standard would result in absurdities, like the sun rising at noon in the Western Territories while setting in the east. To solve this unprecedented continental puzzle, railway operators proposed a radical new conceptual framework. They envisioned slicing the map into broad vertical columns, where every town, city, and citizen within a specific geographical region would agree to share the exact same standardized time, regardless of what the sun was doing directly overhead. On November 18, 1883, the major railway networks of North America executed a breathtaking feat of coordination, simultaneously halting their trains at exactly noon. When the heavy iron wheels began turning again, the continent had been neatly divided into 4 distinct time zones, instantly erasing hundreds of conflicting local times in a single stroke. This day became widely known as the Day of Two Noons, as citizens in various cities had to adjust their clocks backward or forward, effectively experiencing the midday hour twice or skipping it entirely. The transition was not universally welcomed by the general public. Many citizens viewed this corporate imposition as an arrogant violation of natural law, arguing passionately that a mechanical clock dictated by distant railway executives had absolutely no right to overrule the divine, natural order of God's time. Yet, the sheer, undeniable utility of the new system proved impossible to resist. As telegraph wires were strung from pole to pole, expanding rapidly alongside the iron railways, the ability to coordinate precise moments across vast distances became the foundational infrastructure of modern commerce. Stock prices, breaking news, and urgent diplomatic cables could now be transmitted and received within a universally understood framework of hours and minutes. The resounding success of regional standardization inevitably sparked a much grander, more audacious ambition among the global elite. If a sprawling continent could successfully synchronize its clocks, perhaps the entire planet could be unified under a single, elegant mathematical grid of time. This ambitious vision culminated in the 1884 International Meridian Conference, held in the diplomatic halls of Washington, D.C. Delegates from 25 sovereign nations gathered to debate the creation of a universal system that would seamlessly connect global maritime navigation, international trade, and precise scientific observation. The core objective of the assembly was to officially select a Prime Meridian, a definitive globally recognized line of 0 degrees longitude from which all global time and space would be measured. This singular, invisible line would serve as the vital anchor point for a worldwide network of 24 distinct time zones, each representing exactly 1 hour of the Earth's daily rotation. The diplomatic debate over where to draw this crucial invisible line was fiercely contested, driven as much by intense national pride as by navigational logic. France lobbied intensely for the line to pass through Paris, while other delegates suggested the Azores or the Bering Strait, arguing passionately for a neutral location far removed from any major political capital. Ultimately, stark pragmatism won the day over political posturing. The vast majority of the world's shipping and maritime commerce already relied heavily on highly accurate nautical charts based on the Royal Observatory, making Greenwich the most logical, practical, and least disruptive choice for the new global standard. The selection of Greenwich firmly established the mathematical baseline for a newly synchronized planet. It meant that a telegraph operator in Tokyo could precisely coordinate a highly sensitive message with a merchant in London, completely confident that both parties were operating within the exact same temporal framework. Interestingly, France abstained from the final vote and stubbornly clung to its own Paris Mean Time for several decades. When they finally aligned their clocks with the rest of the world, the French government legally defined their time as Paris Mean Time, retarded by 9 minutes and 21 seconds, actively avoiding any official mention of their historic rival across the English Channel. The adoption of this universal grid represented something far more profound than mere administrative convenience. It marked a fundamental, irreversible cognitive shift in how humanity perceived its relationship with the planet, the cosmos, and the very concept of time itself. We collectively stopped looking up at the sky to understand where we were in the day and started looking down at our wrists. Time was no longer an organic, continuous, and fluid phenomenon dictated by nature, but a rigid mechanical construct engineered entirely by human consensus. This artificial synchronization quietly became the invisible, load-bearing scaffolding of the modern world. Without it, the intricate, high-speed choreography of global aviation would collapse into chaos. The instantaneous, algorithmic transactions of international finance rely on timestamps calibrated to the millisecond, and the seamless global operation of the internet depends entirely on servers communicating across oceans in perfect, lockstep harmony. Even the advanced satellites currently orbiting our planet rely heavily on this foundational 19th century agreement. The global positioning system requires ultra-precise atomic clocks synchronized to incredibly strict global standards to calculate your exact location on the Earth's surface down to the meter. The echoes of that historic 1884 assembly still resonate in every digital alarm clock that rings, every international flight we book, and every virtual calendar appointment we schedule. We live our entire lives inside an invisible, mathematical architecture that was originally born out of the desperate, immediate need to keep steam trains from crashing into one another as human civilization pushes further out into the cosmos. This terrestrial system faces entirely new, unprecedented challenges. Space agencies are currently grappling with the complex problem of how to establish standardized timekeeping on the Moon, a celestial body where the terrestrial concept of a 24-hour day is entirely irrelevant. The long, complex journey from a chaotic patchwork of sun-drenched town squares to a precisely synchronized planetary grid reveals a profound truth about human ingenuity and our desire for order. We did not merely invent better, more accurate clocks to measure time. We completely reinvented the concept of time itself to master the sprawling, chaotic world around us.